afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, panelists, for taking time out and being with us here for this afternoon. We've been, since morning, we've been listening to sessions of how tech enablement has, and D2C and e-commerce players have disrupted the customer acquisition, retention, and experience, right? So we're here to talk a little about that. So what we could do is we'll open out a set of questions and each one of us could give us our response on that. So Rishi, we could start with you. How has the focus on CX helped your organization? And you could perhaps talk of it even from a consumer perspective as well as a customer, you know, if you have resellers on your platform and if you are even looking at it from a B2C perspective. Glad to hear your thoughts on this.
Hello, friends. So, as on date, if we say CX or the customer experience, the entire journey, when a customer comes to any of the platforms, he is looking for an experience. He's not just looking for the needs to be fulfilled. And whereas the CX is the most strategic player who can enable them, who can create a brand value, who can create a journey for the customer. And the CX is best enabled because post-sales, they are the one who can help them and create a loyalty for the customer. And that is what he's going to cherish it for longer time. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi. Ashutosh, we were speaking earlier and you did mention that you would like to look at it from two optics of your B2C consumer and the numerous number of resellers and vendors you're onboarding. So your thoughts on that?
So when I look at customer experience, right, in my book, it's a little bit more broad-based. Every touch point they have with the brand is where they're experiencing us at some level. And from a customer perspective, of course, the customers who are coming and shopping on our platform are very important. But equally important are the sellers who are selling on our marketplace. So while we are building a lot of things for the customer to ensure that they have a good experience, before purchase, post-purchase, any touch point they have with us, but even for the sellers, when they have to onboard for us, how are we helping them onboard? Are we giving them some analytics to help them sell more? So I think both of these perspectives come in, right? And India, if I look at from an e-commerce perspective, India is a very unique market at many levels, right? So if you look at globally, assortment, pricing, and experience are the three levers on which businesses are, e-commerce businesses are built. And experience is more important than the other two in a lot of cases. In India, we see slightly different, where pricing is a lot more important than the other two. But having said that, the experience is what defines everything, right? And you know, one user writing a bad review because they had a bad experience with you makes a huge difference. So while we spend a lot of effort on improving the customers when they come to our platform, we spend an equal amount of effort on when something goes wrong or when the customer changes their mind. If they have to exchange their product, if they have to return their product, they have to get a refund, how do we make those experiences a lot more smoother? You know, in fact, I would say a third party also in this is our logistic partners who are going to deliver. So how are we making sure that when someone is going, a customer is doing a return, how do we ensure that a check can be done very quickly, the partner can very quickly verify the right product is returned or not, and there's no back and forth there. So I would say multiple touch points, and everywhere we have to take care of the experience.
Thank you for those thoughts, Ashutosh. Shikha, you want to give us your thoughts on, do you believe CX can, you know, how has it helped your organization create a differentiator, and how has it helped it take it to the next level?
Sure, no, thanks for the question. I think that differentiation that you know, has been articulated by all my fellow panelists as well is very critical. Yeah, so CX is not just customer experience or consumer experience or supply experience. It's how the ecosystem around you and the people you're serving. You know, how do you create a relationship with them? It's never been more easy historically to, you know, start new businesses, but it's in this time it's never been more difficult to essentially have long-lasting relationships with your consumers, and how she reacts essentially, you know, when she chooses you over others. And I think the entire organization needs to really obsess about that. A lot of organizations see that as a cost, right? And it is a cost initially. But, you know, the relationships you create, right, are something that you need to really value and cherish, and your organization, your systems, your processes have to be obsessed about that consumer. It's only then when the entire value network comes to life and aligns itself to create brands and capabilities that last a century or more, right? And I think that's the most critical thing: the mindset, behaviors, and the way your organization is designed to deliver on it. So I think that's my take on it.
For your category?
Yeah, I think you very rightly said the category that we deal with are arguably the most, I would say, sensitive category, because for centuries, this category has remained a touch and feel category, right? And even today, in many households, that's how it is. I mean, I always quote this example: what is a good tomato for you may not be the best one for me. And so that's the level of variation that is there. So therefore, I think we've always tried to look at it from 4 key lenses, customer experience point of view. First and foremost, like my colleague mentioned, assortment, right? Now, if you're wanting to provide the convenience to customers, he must be able to sit in the drawing room and be able to get the assortment, I mean, the right assortment. When I say assortment, it's just not about having, 10,000 articles, 20,000 articles. It's about what is relevant for him, right? The second one is very clearly quality, right? It has to have the quality. And third one is, of course, the pricing. It has to be reasonable, it has to be meaningful and competitive. And last but not the least, you also provide the door-to-door convenience. While trying to do all this, we always try to follow a principle of WYSIWYG, right? WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get, right? So that's an acronym that we formed. What you see is what you get. Because very important that, when I look at on the screen and try to buy a particular item, so I have to ensure, I mean, as a service provider, I have to ensure you get exactly what you see. I mean, this is not like you order, let's say, a particular brand of bread, right? And supposing for any reason that I don't have in stock, I can always send another equivalent bread. I mean, one way of argument is that bread is a bread, right? So therefore you will eat. But we have never done that, because then we will never be able to win the trust of the customer. So we've always kept it saying that WYSIWYG has to be our principle in whatever we do, along with the 4 key ingredients that I talked about. And of course, in technology enables all of these in terms of ease of use, in terms of app, in terms of presentation, pictures, and so on and so forth. But the core towards building customer experience, a strong customer experience based proposition is on some of the points that I mentioned.
Check. Sure. So I think it's very tough to top up all that's been spoken so far, but I'll try and talk about something very specific to the organization I'm a part of, right? At Reliance Retail, we've developed over a decade's worth of experience working with customers offline, right? So one thing we understood is when we talk about customer experience, for me, customer is a household, right? When I treat a household as my customer, then I would have to cater to multiple preferences. In the same household, I know based on demographics, based on age segmentation, right? There are certain preferences, right? Maybe the father of the house or the mother would like to go offline, buy groceries from a store, neighborhood store, whereas the young teenager is more happy, trigger happy, trying to buy stuff spontaneously on a Zepto or a Instamart, right? That's how we believe it works. So what we've tried to do is adopt a strategy, an open channel strategy, going closer to the customers.
So now I'm trying to cater to the entire household. You will get the same product at the same price with almost the same experience, whether you go buy it offline in any of our stores or online. Right? That's one example of how we are trying to get closer to the customers, and when we provide a better customer experience or cater to the customer's preferences, that over a period of time builds trust and makes it work. The second thing we've done is we also studied the Indian demographics and how it's evolving. One of the things that we've realized is while internet penetration, SmartNet penetration has increased, e-commerce penetration is still less than 5%. Right? So for example, rewind 5 to 6 years ago, maybe 20-30 crore of Indian population had access to internet, speed internet. Now that number has doubled or almost become 3 times. 60-70 crore of the population have SmartNets and 4G on their phones. But still all of those 60-70 crores don't have an Amazon, don't have a Jiomart, don't have a big basket. But we know they have WhatsApp. And everybody has WhatsApp. If you have 4G and you have a smartphone, then you have WhatsApp. So we are trying to enable a channel for them, right? How can we get closer to them, make it completely easy? You don't have to download an app. It's a conversational commerce. We say hi, a catalog comes up and place an order, right? So these 2 things we've done and we see good performance, right? Almost our WhatsApp channel grows 30 to 40% month over month, contributes to close to, not 10%, but close to 10% of our overall business. So these are the couple of things that we've done. And whenever you keep customer at the forefront and work backwards, it definitely helps business.
Sure, thank you for that. Again, a large number of levers that have been activated to ensure. Santhosh, you are on the other, you are like a enabler for brands. So it'd be interesting to understand how do you approach it? What are the key, challenges you're solving for and enabling this CX experience?
I think Ashutosh made a great point where he talked about not customers not only as just my customers, partners. There's a whole ecosystem when you're talking about CX, right? And then how CX can enable you to build a brand, right? I'll add one more to it. Like EX is also a part of it, right? Because today, if you look at it, customers are expecting the best customer experience where they have experience from other brands, right? So you don't have a choice of not providing that great CS experience to them because they expect the best what is available in the market. So that's an important point. And then just to take an example of some of the brands that we work with, right? So they create this, what we call it as a white glove treatment, right? So where I treat my customer and then I reduce that friction to them. I think most customers want it easy rather than telling them that, okay, you can buy this and not buy this, or you can do this or upgrade to this. So it's what they are expecting today is to have a seamless conversations with the companies so that they can resolve their queries in there and then see how you can kind of build the brand on top of it, right? So that's what most companies are looking at, how they can create that white glove or a differentiated experience, which is also an important part of what they're trying to do as a brand building.
No, very interesting to understand this from an enabler's perspective. The entire ecosystem is viewed at from this perspective. Rishi, coming back to you, we wanted to understand, we've talked a lot about the initiatives that our esteemed guests here have taken to enable this. But what are the, measurable metrics? Is it consumer delight? Is it retention? Is it lifetime loyalty, or is it revenue? How is that changing? The perception of how this is measured, the tangible benefits, and how is it changing?
So in India, if we see, the consumer segment wants to have an emotional connect. And the emotional connect, once it gets established, creates an atmosphere of trust, the loyalty. And these are some things where customer is 100% aligned to you and they are attached to you permanently. And if we create such personalizations, then we have won the customer for always. And in these scenarios, customer is ready to pay you anything for that experience, for that trust, for the emotional connect. And that is beneficial in terms of the financial metrics also for us as a product company or as a consumer. They also want the same. That's how it is.
Okay. Ashutosh, how do you look at it? I'm sure it is revenue and retention. In addition to that, is customer delight equally and more important over the long run?
Yeah, it is, right? So I think probably the strongest metric to look at this is retention and repeat usage. Like we have multiple e-commerce platforms, we have a marketplace, but we have a luxury platform where I think that's one area where we've done really well. So even now, if I look at data, we have 40% retention even after 2 years of usage, which is for most of the customer cohorts, right? I think that is a very big indicator of giving them a brilliant experience. And then you do a lot of more stuff. You can do a lot of analytics on data to figure out customer profile, figure out which are your good customers, right, at some level. So give them a smoother experience when they want to do a return or a refund. For some customers, based on their usage pattern, you don't need to do that many checks and balances. So I think that makes a big difference. But I would still say retention probably is the strongest metric. All of us are eventually fighting for the same customer, right? For all the brands which are working on this. And everyone knows acquiring a new customer is very, very expensive. Retaining a customer is very important. Also, at some level, also look at what kind of NPS or Net Promoter Score these people have, right? Because today people have access to write, if they have a bad experience with your brand, they can go and write everywhere online, and there's a lot of coverage or a lot of eyeballs which happen on that, right? And fortunately or unfortunately, all of us as human beings, when we have a good experience or as expected experience with the brand, we hardly ever talk about it, right? But as soon as we have a negative experience, the first thing we do is we go to Twitter and write about it, right? So I think that's the challenge. But also, the one way we look at it is not only just addressing issue of that customer when someone goes and has a bad experience and writes about it, but going deeper and figuring out, is there a systemic challenge here? Is there something we can solve so that it doesn't repeat for the other customers, right? There's some circumstances are beyond your control. When there are one-off issue which happens, that can happen, but we also try to learn from it and see, is this something we can fix for the customers going forward?
So what we're hearing is it enables even process optimization, and you keep the rebalancing and the realigning. Shikha, it'll be interesting to understand it from your perspective, because you are initiating, processes and new, what are the metrics that you would look at, given that it's a mainstay FMCG category, and so what helps you drive and define the tangibles?
Sure. And I think the biggest thing is purpose behind your brands, right? So the consumers are really changing. Our purpose is changing. What we want to do, how do we want to do it is changing. So being very, very close to the purpose and what the brand stands for, right? I think that's super, super critical. Like Ashutosh also pointed out, it's much easier to retain a consumer and to retain her rather than acquiring a new one. But I think it's not an all-sum game at the end of the day. Yeah, when your intent is to be purpose-driven, to do good for the larger society. And I know, it's probably easier for me to say with the brands we have in Unilever, but I hear that conversation every single day. What does she want, right? If I am in a factory, my making sure that the quality is right and the product is right, how is it impacting her? We try and create that narrative at every level, right? And that's when it actually gets embedded in the culture and the organization. So I think having a purpose around brand, having the purpose around the people you're serving, having the purpose around people who are producing that, I think is super, super critical. And like I said, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not a relay race, it's a marathon. And one has to have the right mindset, because if we see it as a business transaction at every point where we interact with a consumer, we interact with her, I think it never sticks, right? And people see through it. So I think it's important that the right intent is there and the right purpose is there behind your brands to really grow them.
Thank you, Shikha. We are increasingly learning and listening that it does lead to enormous amount of work at the back end and at every lever across the supply chain. Bala, it'd be interesting to understand, yours is a category where it's impulse, they're constantly flirting, there's a grocer next door, they're driving down to work, they just pick up the groceries. How have you controlling and optimizing that loyalty and retention?
Yeah, like you correctly mentioned, no, I think I always tell, no, we have millions of competitors. True. So every roadside pawn shop is also actually a competitor for us. Correct. So we have tried to keep it reasonably simple with a three-tier approach, right? Yeah. First and foremost at operating level. So at an operating level, there's no point in telling them about market share and all that. They'll find it difficult to relate to and also on a day-to-day basis. So there it is about operating metrics, which is to clearly measure the 4 points that I talked about in my earlier address, which is your ability to have the right assortment, quality, then pricing, and of course the convenience part, which is door delivery. Right? Around that, we have defined the front. First one is fill rate. Right? If customer ordered for 1,000 items, how many are been able to deliver? Right? That's the which is called fill rate, which here again, vice principle. What you see is what you get. The second part is in terms of if is that I will deliver say within 4 hours, 6 hours, 9 a.m. What is the percentage of orders that we have delivered? Third thing is availability. So if you have displayed 100 items, how many items are available at the time when the customer wants to place the order? Because no matter how much you try, you can't have 100% availability all the time because first of all, it's very expensive to do that. Second thing is, your vendor ecosystem also may not always support that. So availability is the third part. Now, if you don't manage these things well, it will result in defects to the customer, which will result in complaints. So the fourth, what is the percentage of orders which generate customer complaints? So these are the 4 things that we keep at operating level. Of course, for the technology team, it is about even app satisfaction, right? That is because that is also something that reflects about user satisfaction with respect to the first interface that they have. So operating level are this. Then we take it to the next level, which is probably at the, at the senior middle management level. We look at things like NPS, right? Start really looking at NPS because NPS, gives indications about your pricing strategy, whether it is working or not, various other, aspects that you want to drive. And then finally, of course, the management council will look at the end output of all. Are you meeting your AOP? Are you exceeding your AOP? Are you meeting your plans? Sales is happening. What is your market share? And so on and so forth. So that's how we have tried to approach the entire, customer experience part.
Extremely granular vectors that have been, put into place. Sandeep, it would be interesting to understand it from your perspective that, you talked about how your offline and online, the seamlessness. Are the metrics different? Or because of the conversion that is happening, the convergence of these channels, are they also blending? It'd be interesting to understand what you think.
I think frankly, the metrics are the same. I'd like to keep it short because I think the responses have been exhaustive so far. Specifically on your question, I think the metrics are the same, right? If you're looking at customer satisfaction, if you're talking about customer repeat rates, if you're talking about stickiness, etc. The metrics are the same, but the measures or the impact or the results could be different. For example, if you're talking about customer retention, what happens in an offline store is different from what happens on an online store, right? Online store, we talk about sessions, for example, right? The conversion from people who come, open the app, look for products to who actually purchase the product is quite low, right? It is anywhere between 0.5 to 2%, right? Based on the category. Whereas if you are walking into a store, it's much higher. A person who's made the effort to come to the store does not exit without buying something, right? So it's just an example, but in essence, what I'm trying to say is the metrics will be same, but the impact, the measures are different based on the channel. I'll stop at that. I don't have much to add beyond what others have spoken.
No, absolutely. Thank you. That was helpful. Santhosh, you as an enabler, have you heard different brands define different metrics of success for you? And while you're at that, we could also, then answer that is it increasingly being looked at still as a cost center, or is it investments that have come in now to say this is an investment, and as Shikha said, it's a marathon. So, we need to go the long haul. How do you look at it?
I think I agree with Sandeep, right? I think the metrics are same, but what generally that we see now is also to look at something, what we call it as customer effort score, right? Like Ashutosh mentioned, is it a return, is it worth smooth, right? I mean, how much effort that customer had to put or my partners had to put. I think that is something significant that we are seeing across the board where they actually want to measure that, not just the whether, hey, did your agent answer the question or did we deliver on time? Or do you want to recommend my brand, which is what generally the NPS kind of does. But that is where most people are looking at, hey, what is the overall effort that customer had to put in to kind of interact with the brand? I think that's one of the key metric. In terms of the cost center, I think that's been an old age kind of a question where everywhere we kind of ask is, it is, right? When we did a survey last year, worldwide 1 in 3 organization kind of said, yes, it is a cost center. The number goes up in India, so it was about 68% of the organization said, yes, it is a cost center. But again, in this economic times, I think there's an opportunity for the organization to look at how we can kind of provide that differentiated experience that we talk about, and then create that emotional brand that Rishi kind of touched upon it, right? Because one of the things that was very glaring in our survey was that it only takes one bad experience for your customers to change, right? And the number was about 68% of them said it's only one bad experience that is required for them to buy from the competition. So it is imperative that organization no longer look at that as a cost center, and then look at the opportunities in terms of when a customer is coming to me, because CX is where you're very closest to your customers, because they're giving you real-time feedback because based on your product and services that you are being provided. So it's important that they not treat as a cost center and look at it as an opportunity to see how we can push more, right? In terms of not being more salesy there, push right products at the right time. I think that there's an opportunity to kind of look at it.
Thank you, Santhosh. So Rishi, we did talk about the emotional connect and hence how it does then almost convert into a lifetime association. So does that still mean it's a cost center, or is it moving towards it being looked at the optics of investment and higher revenue, and given there's so much competition, we need to make sure we hold on to that loyal customer?
See, in my view, it's not a cost center. It should be looked from a different scape. It should be looked from a branding aspect. It should be looked from something we need to change.
True.
The change is the only constant. If we don't change, we will not abide by what customer wants. What is the customer experiencing? Or there is another way to look at it also creates a bonding among the people. The moral, we see the customers always, but when it comes to even our own employees, if we see this as a cost center, then it's a different aspect. If we want to grow, we should see it as a moral boosting among the teams. And that is most important for the success. And CX are the people who enables the change within the organizations. And they really abide what is required immediately, what we need to change to abide by customer experience, the need, and everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi. This resonates with what even Shikha was saying, that employees at every level within the organization impact the CX. Ashutosh, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think I don't look at it personally as a cost center. It drives a lot of sales, it drives a lot of repeat usage. I'll take a slightly bad example because this company has a tremendous margin, but if you look at Apple, even the experience of unboxing an Apple product, there's so much thought which goes into just how that whole thing is designed, right? And that is also part of the experience. Many companies may not look at it. Closer home for us, when we look at Tata CLiQ Luxury, the box in which your product comes in is so unique that so many people reach out to us for that. While it is an expense, of course, it's more expensive than normal shipping, but that leaves a big impression in terms of customers on what the brand stands for, right? So I think overall, from an experience perspective, I would still count it as an investment. In fact, again, on a luxury platform, if I look at something like luxury watches, which we sell, even though it's all online, we recently started, maybe a year ago, we started something called assisted selling. So if there is a customer who's been on that product detail page for a long time and not taken a decision, there is actually a customer support executive who can reach out to this customer, talk to them and convince them. And I personally did not used to think that very expensive, while we were doing this for a while, recently we had new tie-ups and we got some really expensive watches on our platform, upwards of 10 lakhs, right? Now we are selling watches which are 13, 14 lakhs where someone is talking to the customer also. Because in some cases, customers need a little bit more hand-holding and a little counterintuitive for an e-commerce player to be, also adding that layer. But it's worth it. We've seen that it's worth it.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Shikha, your thoughts, you did say it's a marathon, right? And so I'm sure you believe that it has to be viewed at from a perspective of investment. Is that changing? We know that you personally look at it as but is that changing, and do you think it's going to be a while before?
So absolutely, I think we're living in a very experiential world, right? Experiences mean everything to us. The movie you watch, where you go and eat, how do you dress. I think even the education is very experiential right now, right? So we are in a world where experiences matter. And whether you're washing clothes or you're buying, a Ralph Lauren outfit for yourself, there is an initial investment, and I'd call it an investment rather than a cost, because it's, the money that goes in making your product or creating a service, right? I think it's part of the basic pack now, not something that, you're saying it's an advertising spend and stuff like that. I'll give an example of, for example, Netflix. I think all of us subscribe to that, right? And there are 33 million versions of Netflix customized to each one of us sitting in the room, right? If you're using it. So you will see the content you'd like to see. It's slightly easier for tech platforms because you can create algorithms, you can customize. There is no physical, service involved there. But even if you look at Uber, they do 22,000 upgrades to their apps every single month to give that experience. Or Disney, right? When you go to a Disney World, how that starts with the digital bracelet, or even McD's in certain markets, right? How do they approach the entire journey? So I think somewhere it hits the P&L, and hence what you see is a cost. But I think one has to see and look at it in terms of a differentiator and how that leads to growth, and how that leads to an experience that you want to really deliver. So I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. It's in the gray, not a perfect black or white, depending on where you're operating and how you're operating.
Certainly impossible to not look at CX in an important way. Bala, we heard you say a number of vectors have been activated to ensure that the business model ensures optimization and CX. So does your firm also look at it more as a cost center, or they do believe that all of this is what has led to where you are in terms of scale and in terms of preference as a format?
Absolutely. I think it's not at all a cost. It's an investment, and it's also an imperative. You have no choice. Because, in our category, I always tell my teams also, a dal is a dal is a dal, right? Everybody sells. Only my mother was probably capable of differentiating by looking at which dal is better than the other. Today, most of us will struggle to differentiate which is one. Therefore, the only thing that's going to differentiate us from others is customer experience, the way we serve the customers in all aspects that I talked about, right? With respect to whatever we are trying to serve. We have to do it because the cheapest form of advertisement that we all know is word of mouth. True. And in our category, word of mouth can be extremely good and also extremely terrible. If my wife tells my neighbor, never ever buy from Big Basket, that's all, it's gone, right? So therefore, we understand that it's super critical, because this is the only way where you can differentiate from rest of the other players and continue to gain your market share and grow as well. So.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you for that. Sandeep, you're the last one in this because Santhosh has already answered his thoughts on, cost center. But how does your firm view it? What are your thoughts on how this is changing? Is it a long haul or? Yeah.
See, the best customer experience, I think I'll take a different path here. The best customer experience can be provided across two areas, right? Wherever there are customer touch points. One is the technology, right? The app experience. The second is either the delivery experience, or when someone calls the customer support. These are the touch points typically, right? While in the P&L it may look like a cost center, saying that I've invested so much of headcount to build this product, invested so much of headcount to deliver this product, etc. In my mind, it is very clear that it's a top-line driver. I'll give an example so that people understand it very clearly, right? Being in the digital commerce world, right? Search becomes very important. How do you ensure that you are giving the best possible search experience for customers? It becomes extremely important. If you just end up giving the best search experience by investing in tech bandwidth, it becomes an investment, it becomes a cost center. If you look at all the e-commerce companies, what they've been doing over the past couple of decades, they've not just built the search and left it there. They've started monetizing it. They launched something called as sponsored products, right? Sponsored ads, where people are now charging brands, sellers, to ensure that their displays are coming up. How are they able to do that? Because they've invested in creating a significant search experience for customers. So now it's become monetizable. So now that becomes a top line element. The same investment, why we show it in the P&L as a bottom line, it ends up driving top line for me, right? So in my mind, it is very clear. Even if I do X, Y, Z to reduce friction for customers, what it does at the end is increases repeats from the same customer, increases word of mouth, like Mr. Bala has said. So overall for me, it's a top line driver. That's how I treat it. Any incremental investment we make, we always treat it as a top line driver at the end.
Thank you so much. Thank you, dear panelists. I think we had the most interesting and engaging conversation around CX and the impact it has on business and in customer delight and engagement. Thank you once again for your time.